Welcome to our first ever offseason in the Arkansas State Red Wolves Dynasty. We have a lot to get into in the offseason. I'm excited to get into our first full season as head coach of the Red Wolves. We are going to be graduating of quite a few guys and looking to replace a lot of guys in the offseason. I just want to briefly check out the coaching moves in the Sun Belt Conference because there were a few of them. Marshall got a new head coach. South Alabama also got a new head coach. And then Southern Miss as well. Southern Miss has been coming off of some really bad seasons. That would have been a team to rebuild as well in the Sun Belt. We did hire a new offensive coordinator in George Burdell, and a big reason why we chose him was because he did spend 45 points in the recruiter tree, and then when we went into the tree last episode, it didn't look like 45, but now it kind of does. I'm not exactly sure. I still think he's missing some, or the game is misreporting that. But let's get into the offseason. We expected that players would be transferring with a new coach coming in. And we didn't expect that it would be three of our top 4 rated players on the roster, Malik Hornsby, Jaquez Cross, along with Rucker, who was a top receiver for us. He would be a junior or a senior going into next season. Marcus Bradley, who was our top edge rusher that we had this season, and then a backup defensive tackle in Lucas Banks. And none of them have a persuasion chance at all, so we will not even be attempting to try to persuade them. But as you go down the list of guys that have graduated, we have all of our 80s overall guys graduating, every single one. And it amounts to 29 total players leaving the squad. That is a lot. That's enough to have a starting offense and defense, which is kind of crazy to say. So if you want to follow along with the time markers down below, I do have this video marked, but we're going to dive deep into recruiting. So let's talk about our top guys on the board currently, and these are all high school players. And I'm going to talk about our plan as well when we get to the transfer portal guys, but Nick Rawwasser is our top recruits that we have rated right now. I need a middle linebacker that can tackle for sure, and that is athletic, and that's exactly what he is. We'll see if we can keep, putting points on him and seeing if he does commit. Anthony Capps is a local guy out of Jonesboro. Now, I don't need to put too many points on him because there's not much competition right now for him, so I'm just going to put 10 there, and if we do get more competition late, I will add more points. Steven Tobias is another one of those guys. I see Georgia is second, but they are currently not pursuing him too much, so I'm only going to put 10 on him, but he is a linebacker who I think is going to be athletic. I really don't need to scout these guys fully because I want to save the points, and I think that I'm going to save those for, guys that I have no idea about or guys that I just want to recruit late in this recruiting cycle in the offseason. Aries Blanco is a guy that I do like. He's 5'11". He is out of Arkansas too. So we're really going to be taking advantage of this pipeline here and the close to proximity for these recruits. And I'm going to put 50 on him because I do need a developmental safety. He doesn't have to be a day one starter, but a guy I know I can rely on in the future. Probably my favorite recruit on this board is Mike Williams. 94 speed, 90 acceleration. Just adding more speed to the receiving room and guys that can actually run routes is definitely one of my priorities. I think one thing I noticed here is that if you do have a good route runner, which we just saw with Courtney Jackson, it opens up your offense a whole lot. And I think Mike Williams has a potential to be a really good route runner. So we will add 25 to him. We are in first place. Matthew Aikman is a 2-star middle linebacker, 6'1", 234 out of St. Louis. We are a neighboring state, so we are going to have some really good recruits coming out of Missouri, like Tennessee, Arkansas, like all those neighboring states in the middle of this country here. David Elkins is a tight end that I do like here. He's a vertical threat. I don't need to scout him fully because usually vertical threats have good speed, and that's one thing I covet with tight ends, and I do want to add that into this offense. And then the last guy I have here is Rodney Roche. He is a zone tendency cornerback. And the reason why I do want to go after him is because on our roster right now, we have a lot of cornerbacks that are good man cover corners, not a lot of zone cover corners. So I do want to make sure that we get a good mix of those. So let's talk about our plan with the transfer portal. I do want to go after it because we did lose 5 starters, or at least 4 starters that transferred away. So there are some holes we definitely need to fill, especially at running back, because running back, we just graduated 2 players and then 1 player ended up transferring. So we're down 3 running backs at this point. So we need to add some depth here. So I'm going to look at the portal here at 2 power backs because we're losing a power back in Zach Wallace. I want to replace him. There's 2 backs I'm looking at here. Trent Battle from TCU. He's got a lot of physical traits, head first, workhorse, downhill, and arm bar, all bronze. Now, he is a transfer junior, and I guess you're right now, you don't really know if they're going to end up being a senior next year or a junior, but it says he's a transfer junior right here, unless there's a way that I don't know about. And then there's Jay Harris from Oregon, and he's from St. Louis, which helps out a lot. He is in our pipeline as well, and we are first on both of their lists. So we are going to add both of them to the board, and hopefully one of them, at least one of them, commits to the team. Offensive line, I definitely want to recruit. There's a couple of really good players in the portal that do want to consider Arkansas State. All these guys have a second, but one guy that sticks out is Amarion Harris because he has 3 physical abilities: pocket shield, play action shield, and wear down, meaning he's a pretty good pass protector. So I don't really need to know what his ratings are. I know he's coming in as a really good player out of, Arkansas, and he's going, pretty much down the road from Arkansas in Little Rock to Arkansas State in Jonesboro. Outside linebacker, I should say, is a position of need, mainly because I need guys that can get after the passer and play in coverage. Jordan Hall right now is the top interested transfer portal player, but we are 8th on his list, and I know that's going to be a pretty tall task. But one guy that is here is Santarine Perkins. He is currently with Ole Miss in real life, and I know in real life he has 10.5, I believe, sacks on the year at this point. He's a really good edge rusher, so I definitely add him to the board as quick as I've added anybody once I saw him available. Stone Blanton is a guy that I was interested in here at linebacker. We end up adding him. Caleb Edwards is interesting too. Now, in my Marshall series that I just finished, he was an edge rusher. He's an outside linebacker. In this roster update, he's a middle linebacker. I won't go after him. I attempted to do that in the Marshall series and did not get him, but I won't do that again just because he moves positions. If he stayed at outside linebacker, I would have. But I do want to just talk about these guys, starting with Perkins. He's going to be coming in as a junior because I know he did get a year of playing in, so he did not get a red shirt officially. Then there's Trent Battle, who is that running back from TCU, and we're going to add some points to him. We're going to add 15 to him. But I just like Jay Harris a little bit better because those physical abilities that we saw are just slightly better. I know he had like a silver in a couple of them, and Battle had bronze in all of them. So we're going to add 50 points to him, send the house, and then offer him a scholarship, obviously. Then there's Amarion Harris, who, like I said, is going to be a really good pass protector for us, at least for 2 years. At least he's going to play for 2 years for us, and he's coming from Arkansas. We are right now behind Appalachian State, who ended up winning the Sun Belt Conference Championship here in year 0. And then Stone Blanton, he is a transfer from Mississippi State. I'm going to put a lot of points on him because I saw one of our deficiencies when in those couple of games that I played. It was tackling from the linebacker position. So now I go to the high school prospects, and here are a couple of guys that I will talk about a little bit. Monty Ajabo, a defensive end, we're 4th on his list. Zaire Paul, who is technically a 6'5" possession tendency. I believe that is a receiver or a tight end. Then Dom Thompson, a physical wide receiver, 6'5". Pat Cushenberry, another one of those tall, lanky guys. He is technically a quarterback. Mustafa Mayo, a scrambling archetype as an athlete. He's 6'3". And you can just see I'm just trying to add different types of players to the roster to kind of see what we like here. So I decide to add 25 points to Clay Brooks. He is a defensive end, it looks like. Monty Ajabo is also a good size, 6'3", 270 defensive end. I definitely want to just add some size to this roster. We are way behind Louisiana Tech right now. Zaire Paul, I'm going to add some points to him. We are first on his list. And I don't know what he looks like as far as scouting, but he is a possession. I believe that's tight end. So we will add 10 to him and see if other teams go after him and maybe just up those points as we just discover more about other players. But that's just about it on the first round here in recruiting. So moving on to week number 2 now, as we do not get any commitments, but we are first and second on a lot of these players' board. Checking in on Perkins, it looks like Louisiana, who did go to the Sun Belt Championship in year 0, they are really, really close between us and them. So I think we're going to have to at least keep going with Send the House. And we're going to schedule a visit here in week 2. The one thing is that we have playing time at an A+ for him. And that's not one of the things he desires. Obviously, he was a starter in real life for Ole Miss. I don't think playing time is really, an issue for him. And hard selling him with what we have as grades would probably hurt us more than it would help us. So we will keep that Send the House. Jay Harris, we are still in first place with him. He's actually considering Ball State and Arkansas State. I think that might be a battle we might win outright if we just keep it on 50 with Send the House. Amarion Harris, a left tackle here. He's huge. I just realized that 6'7", 300, and we're going to up the ante with him because, like I said, I just need that pass protection, need to help out our young quarterback in Jalen Raynor. I guess he's not young anymore going into his junior season. And then I unlock these quarterbacks here, and I start to scout them to see which one I want to go at because I want to be smart with the points. I don't want to go after like 3-4 quarterbacks when I really don't need one right now. Kyle Durant, we end up scouting him once, and he is 69 speed. He does have a mental ability there, but 69 speed is definitely a deterrent. Pat Cushenberry, he has 85 acceleration and option king, meaning he's going to have pretty good speed probably, so his throw power looks like it's going to be pretty good too, and his accuracy looks like it's in a good range. And then Mustafa Mayo, who is a athlete, quarterback, scrambler archetype, 87 speed. So he's definitely going to be a really good mobile quarterback. So I decide to, out of these 3 quarterbacks, get rid of Kyle Durant here, and I'm going to go after Cushenberry and Mayo, and I'm probably just going to go after them equally. I don't have a preference for either one. Obviously, we're not going to scout them fully to see exactly what they are because we don't really need to. I just wanted to get a little sneak preview to make sure they're okay, and then we'll advance on to the next week. So on to week 3, and we get some news on our top guy on our board in Rawwasser, and it looks like Nebraska is making a late move. And anytime you are a smaller school and one of those bigger schools jumps you, you can pretty much chalk it up as over. So I decide to concede defeat with Rawwasser, but that definitely makes it so that I have to make sure I secure some of these young linebackers that aren't Rawwasser now. Aries Blanco, we're second on his list. Hopefully we catch SMU there. But I decided to go back to the prospect list and see what is out there because now that we lost our top recruit in Rawwasser, I definitely want to replace him on the board. Cameron Kroll is a run-stopping athlete, so that is technically a linebacker. I don't know which linebacker position that would be, though. Maybe middle linebacker, maybe outside linebacker, one of those two. But I don't need to scout him. I don't think I do. We're 5th on his list, and he has no scholarship offers. So we will just get in here late and pretty much Send the House. I mean, there's no risk in this at all. We just lost our top recruit, and we have to make up some ground. And then we add Shamir Warmack, but we are way behind here. It looks like he is interested in Louisiana Tech, but we add them those two to the board, and then advance on to week number 4 here to see if we can steal some late guys. But still no commitments. But Rawwasser does commit to Nebraska during that week, so it looked like we had no chance anyway. But I decided to go to the prospect list and just add some last-second guys. Conrad Kaminsky, a tight end. We are first on his board. Ethan Truman, a 3-star tackle, and then Derek Sylvan, another 3-star tackle. All guys that had us first on their board. And remember, we graduated, or at least we lost 29 guys going into this offseason. So I'm going to try to fill all of those positions and then advance on to signing day. Anthony Capps, the local running back out of Jonesboro, does commit to his hometown Red Wolves. He doesn't have to move far. He can just walk to campus if he wanted to. He's right here, and he commits to our school. He is our first commitment. Matthew Aikman, the 2-star middle linebacker. He's going to have some time to develop. And then Santarine Perkins ends up committing, and he was out of Ole Miss. He goes now to the Sun Belt Conference. So he does go to a smaller school, but maybe there are other things more important than playing for a larger school. Rodney Roche, he was a 3-star high school zone cover cornerback. He commits. And then Amarion Harris flips from Arkansas over to Arkansas State. He will also get a chance to probably play his former team this season. Stone Blanton ends up committing. So we get 2 SEC players in Stone Blanton and what we just saw from Perkins coming from Ole Miss and Mississippi State respectively. Zaire Paul ends up committing. It looks like they had him listed as a tight end right there. That's something that maybe is a little bit interesting there. I thought he was a quarterback. But here is what our final board looks like. Raul Wasser obviously committed to Nebraska last week. Anthony Capps is coming, the local kid. And then Steven Tobias, he ends up being impact dev. So we get a good impact dev, our first impact dev player on the board. Aries Blanco does end up going to SMU. He would have been impact dev. We end up third in that race despite having send the house. So pretty much the max amount of points we could have committed to him. Mike Williams ends up committing. He is going to be impact development trait as well. 94 speed. I can't wait to see what that looks like in the offense. Matthew Aikman, 2-star. He is just normal dev. He commits to Arkansas State. And then Elkins, who is a vertical threat tight end. Impact development. So we get some pretty good impact guys right at the top of our board here. And he signs, and he's going to have a future at tight end with us. Rodney Roche. He is just normal dev. And then we had those recruits that when we took over the team had already committed. A lot of 1-stars, a couple of 2-stars in here. But Perkins ends up committing. He is impact dev. And the only thing that sucks about getting transfer portal players is they do not develop in the offseason. You just get them as what they were. Jay Harris commits here to Arkansas State. But we lose Trent Battle to UAB. So that kind of sucks there, even though UAB did not offer him a scholarship. We'll come back to that a little later. Amarion Harris, impact dev. He does commit. He's going to probably start at tackle or guard. Stone Blanton commits, and that was a big one because missing out on Rawwasser, I was really panicking. I needed Blanton in the recruiting class. Monty Ajabo ends up committing to Louisiana Tech. But we were the only team to offer him a scholarship. And now I've read this online because we now see that with 2 players. It turns out that if you offer a scholarship to a player, he does not commit to your team, but he commits to the team that does not offer him a scholarship, he goes to the next team in line that offer him a scholarship. So I believe we have Ajabo on the roster along with the running back from TCU. Mustafa Mayo commits to the team. Now, he is a quarterback, but when you saw that commitment on the screen, it was showing that he was a tight end, I believe. Shamir Warmack commits to Louisiana Tech. Cameron Kroll is a late commitment to Arkansas State, along with Ethan Truman, Sylvan, and Kaminsky, who we added in that final week. And Truman is a star development tackle. He was a last-second add, and he ends up being our best development trait player. So that is definitely huge to add him late in the process. But we look at our class with 28. So we go and move on from 29 players due to graduation and transferring, and then sign 28 total. Couldn't write it better in my book, to be honest with you. So we had a really good offseason in recruiting, and most of our recruits were guys that we did not start recruiting until like the last week of the regular season. So that is huge for us. Louisiana had a better class. They obviously went to the conference championship, lost to Appalachian State. But going down the board, what was crazy is that Appalachian State had the last ranked recruiting class in the conference. So we move on to position changes because we had 5 athletes in that class. First, Trey Claybrooks. Now, he is 6'4", 282, does have a couple of good mental abilities. Road dog, allows you to have some composure on the road. DL rally gives you the rest of your line composure boost, I believe, when you make a play or when they make a play. So we look at his positions, and this one is really, really easy. It's defensive end. So we don't even need to think about that. He is going to be our highest rated right end right now, and technically our highest rated defensive end before training, which is pretty incredible. So he could have a chance to start day 1. Mustafa Mayo is a scrambling archetype quarterback, but if you look at his best position, it is a tight end, a vertical threat tight end. Now, technically, we have 4 tight ends on our roster at this point, but I decide to move him to tight end, especially since if you look at his ratings, he's got 80 catching, really good route runner. He's 87 speed, and he's 6'3", 206. I mean, he's not a small player at all. So I feel like this kind of just fits. He's a decent blocker as well. Even though he is a scrambling archetypes quarterback, I just like the way he fits here because technically when we put him at tight end, he is our second highest rated tight end on the roster. So a guy that I thought was going to be a quarterback is now a tight end. As we move on to the local kid, Anthony Capps, who's going to have, I bet, some storylines in this series. He can play a lot of positions, but I recruited him to be a running back, and that's what I'm going to stick with. I think right now, just with our depth at running back, I want a young freshman running back to kind of lean on to develop, and a pass catching back as well. Cameron Kroll, who we added late after we found out Nick Rauwasser was going to go to Nebraska, ends up being a pretty decent outside linebacker or a defensive end. But I think I like his kind of just athletic ability overall as a linebacker. He also has good zone cover, zone coverage rating at 74. I don't want to waste that with a defensive end. And then there's Zaire Paul, who looks like a tight end, but he has really, really good tackling at 87, which technically would be the highest rating of a tackler on the roster right now. 87 would be the best tackler. I don't know if I can waste that on tight end because as you just saw, we had the position change for Mayo. Mayo goes to tight end, and we recruited another tight end this class. So Zaire Paul is going to go to linebacker, and that's really where he's going to stick. So now we move on to training. And training is huge for me. I am a motivator, I guess, coach archetype. So this is where kind of my rebuilds shine. I want guys to develop a lot in the offseason. Recruiting is good, but I don't mind recruiting those 2 stars, 3 stars, and just developing them and having them have those offseason boosts, get some experience under their belt. But let's talk about our biggest boost. First, Ian Jeffries, who goes from a 72 overall up to a 77, or I guess a 78 overall. And he's going to be one of the captains this year on defense. I had a lot of fun playing with him at the end of last year, and he wasn't technically a starter, but we did give him some playing time, and he surprised me. His skill caps are pretty high, and he's going to have a few years to really be the starter there as he's coming in as a redshirt sophomore, or I guess maybe a sophomore. Tennell Bryant had a pretty big offseason as well. He goes from 62 overall up to 73. Obviously, the one big rating for him is that 98 speed, but he has developed now as a route runner. He's maxed out there, but that speed is definitely going to be something we use, and I'm going to take full advantage of it. Let's talk about defensive end Drew Collins. 66 overall at the end of last year. He was a true freshman, but now he has jumped up to an 81 or an 82 overall with the coaching boost. That is by far the biggest jump we have on our roster right now. Going from a 66 to an 81, 15 overall. If you count the coach boost, 16 overall. But look at the skill caps. He still has a lot of room to grow. He's going to be a very good player for us. DeAubrey Hood was 73 overall last year as a redshirt freshman. He goes up to 85 after the offseason. And to add to that, he is our second fastest player on the roster, 97 speed. Darrell Horn, another one of those guys, 65 overall last year as a freshman. Darrell Horn is now a 76 overall as a redshirt freshman. And then A.J. Beal, 66 overall last year as a sophomore, and then jumps up to a 74 overall as a redshirt sophomore. Our defensive backfield definitely had a big, and I mean a big offseason. And I thought it was going to be one of our weaknesses going into this season. Let's take a look at some of the transfer portal players that came over. Jay Harris looks good, 75 overall. We see that he's 88 speed. And last year he played for Oregon, and this is why he transferred. 1 carry, 1 yard, 1 touchdown. One of the funniest stat lines you'll see, but he will probably be our starter at tailback. Amarion Harris comes over, and I forgot to switch his position. Based on how our roster looks, he's going to probably play at left guard. He's going to be a guy that can protect well from the inside. And how I believe offensive linemen should switch positions, you should always go outside in, never inside out. Realistically, tackles just naturally transition inside, but the opposite rarely happens. Stone Blanton comes in at 78 overall, and I looked at his stats. He was actually a starter, and I didn't really realize that for Mississippi State. 65 solo tackles. He's going to be a starter day one, and that's why I brought him in. And then there's Suntarine Perkins, who comes in as a very polished pass rusher. 93 finesse moves. He must have gotten hurt at the end of last season because he has a hamstring tear here. But I went to look at his stats because I knew he played with Ole Miss in real life. But here in the game, he's even better. 14 sacks last year, and he decides to transfer to Arkansas State. I think we found a gem in the recruiting class. I wanted to highlight something that I said I would come back to, and that was the fact that if you are a team that offers a scholarship and the player commits to another team, you end up getting that recruit because you offer the scholarship. So for Trent Battle, he will be on the roster, but I just don't know how I feel about that for transfer portal players. And right now, he's going to be on the roster, but let me know if you think he should get playing time, because I kind of feel like I'm manipulating the game a little bit. I know it's a part of the game, but I feel like, UAB would have offered him a scholarship, so I might not play him. I guess we'll see how that goes. But encourage transfers. I had a couple of guys I wanted to encourage to transfer. First was Timmy McClain. The one thing about Timmy McClain, when I hit encourage transfer, he transfers away, and I've read on Reddit that you go to in alphabetical order, A through Z, you go to a team that has an open roster spot. But it turns out that I guess no team had a roster spot, or there's a glitch in the game. He just is completely off of the game. I could not find him on any roster, so I feel bad for even encouraging him to transfer. But that means that now that gives maybe our future at quarterback, Pat Cushenberry, time to develop. Now, the one thing that I did not like about him is that he ends up being 74 speed and only 85 throw power. One thing I've noticed after these updates, quarterback recruits come in with a lot of guys in the 80s in throw power. I think they patched that in the game. Now you have to really develop quarterbacks to get them to have a higher throw power, which is pretty realistic, to be honest with you. Anthony Capps looks like he's going to be pretty good. His skill caps are okay. They're not great, but he is normal dev. Mike Williams looks like he's going to be a really good player in the future. His skill caps are pretty decent for what I got him for. Like, we had him, he had us first on his list pretty much all year, but he looks like he's going to still develop a lot. So I'm very, very happy that we landed him. Mustafa Mayo was a guy I recruited as a quarterback, and it turns out he's a really good tight end, but his skill caps are almost pretty much maxed out. I mean, he has one more bar here for route running, one more for IQ, and one more for blocking. So I would say he could probably reach 80 overall, but that's probably his ceiling. So I know he's going to be an athletic tight end, but I'm definitely just going to have to use his speed for those mismatches on the slower linebackers. Ethan Truman. I want to talk about him because he was our only star development guy in this offseason. And he was a guy I added and didn't even think about it twice. And he ends up being one of our best recruits, 70 overall. And he's going to develop, but he doesn't need to start here in year one. We're probably going to redshirt him. One of the guys that's going to start day one on defense as a true freshman is Trey Claybrooks. And not because he's like super, super good, but because he is just technically the best defensive end on the roster. And right now, I don't think he has much competition. He's probably going to start there. Cameron Kroll, I hate this glitch in the game where you have a speed rusher outside linebacker. It just says undefined here. I'm surprised they still haven't fixed that in the game, but he's pretty good starting out as a true freshman. Zaire Paul, who we moved over to middle linebacker, he's 72 overall. He has some developing to do, so I'm probably going to end up playing him, but he's probably going to be a backup here in year one. And then next year, Stone Blanton could be handing him the keys as the starter at middle linebacker, that primary signal caller for our defense. Monty Ajabo was one of those guys that, like I said, offer him a scholarship, and if he commits to another school, he ends up coming to your school. That's what happened with him. But for a high school player, I don't feel as bad because you have to still develop them. For transfer portal guys, they come in a little bit higher, so I'm going to keep Ajabo, and I'm going to play him. If I end up not redshirting him, I'll end up playing him. There's one guy I want to highlight here, which is a 2-star, Emmett Woods. He was one of those guys that we inherited in the recruiting class. So he wasn't a guy that I recruited, but had already committed to the team. And then there's Rodney Roche, the one zone cover cornerback we went after this year. And I feel really good because our cornerback group really did have a really good offseason. So going into our official year one with our first full season as head coach for the Red Wolves, we will start out with this schedule. North Texas on the road. And North Texas was one of the best group of 5 teams in the nation last year. They made the playoffs and ended up whooping the opponent in the quarterfinal game, made it to the semifinals in the college football playoff. Then we will face Arkansas, led by Taylon Green, one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the country. So that little rivalry game will be underway here early on in the season. Arkansas State plays Iowa State in 2025 in real life. I decided to keep that game on the schedule, and they are led by junior quarterback Rocco Becht, who is a gunslinger on his own. And then we added Memphis to our schedule here for our real only true rival of this dynasty will be Memphis, and we'll just make it a thing to play them every single year and kind of just go toe with them and see how they develop. And we'll see, you know, what happens in the future. Will we both meet in the same conference eventually if we both get promoted? That's way down the road, but we will play Memphis every single year and make that a tradition. Then we hop out into Sun Belt Conference play, playing Texas State, Southern Miss, Louisiana, UL Monroe, Old Dominion, Troy, South Alabama, and Marshall. So I am very, very excited for this schedule. And we have a 1-ranked team, but we do play 3 Power 5 schools, I guess Power 4 schools. And we'll see what happens here in our first full season. I went to practice a little bit, and I won't show too many clips, but one thing I can tell you is the defense is light years ahead of the offense. We're definitely just going to have to work on the offense and practice a little more and figure out the scheme we want to run. But we are running a spread, but just figure out the playbook we want to choose. So that's going to do it here for the offseason. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know key players that you saw that might stick out that maybe I did not mention, or maybe guys that I did mention that you are excited to see. But that's going to do it here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hit subscribe, hit that like button. We'll be back for season 1, and we will get this series finally kicked off, and we'll see what we did and if it paid off in the offseason. Hit subscribe, hit that like button. Stay tuned. Let's get it. Let's go.